standard.
2 wires and a light bulb, that could be it. Hey, good morning, Roger.
Morning, Kev.
So where are you taking us today?
We're going outside to do some landscaping you can only appreciate in the dark.
Really? What's that?
We're going to help a homeowner install a low-voltage lighting system.
Which is why you need this.
I don't need that. I think Richard can use that.
Really? All right, well, I'll be sure to check that out. Hey, good morning,
Hey,
Richard.
Kevin.
So where are you taking us today?
Under a kitchen sink.
Hey, that's new.
No, not really. Homeowner's got an older kitchen faucet. We're going to install a new one. Show you just how easy it is to do it.
And you know what? It could be dark underneath there, which is why Roger wants you to have that.
You really should know.
Oh, he did.
Thanks.
Well, good morning. I'm Kevin O'Connor, and welcome back to another episode of Ask This Old House, where our experts take you to the nicest places. And where is Tom Silva taking us today? Well, to the attic. He's going to show us how you can reduce some of your energy bills by installing this, insulation.
Well, Tom, the reason why we emailed you was because we've been living in the house now for 8 months. It's starting to get cold out, and I know we don't have a lot of insulation up here. Can you help us?
Well, let's see what you have here first, Tony. You've actually got what is called rock wool insulation, and this was probably blown in the house when the house was built years ago. And like a lot of insulation that's blown in, it settles over time. And let's see what you have here. Well, you've only got about 2 inches of insulation in here. So the first thing I want to do is dump some cellulose in here to bring it up higher. All right, this is a bag of cellulose insulation we picked up at the home center. Sometimes it's blown in with a machine, but we're actually just going to dump it in and rake it around and make it level. Now you just rake it around, Tony. We want to give it up a little bit higher than the top of the joist. We want to get in as much as we can. All right, it's nice and level now. Let's see what we have. Well, we have 6 inches. That's about an R19, and that's actually not enough because the building code requires an R38.
Oh, well, what else can we do?
Well, I'm simply going to take some fiberglass batt insulation and lay it right over this level surface. Okay, the first piece, Tony. Now this is 9.5 inches thick, 24 inches wide, and 4 feet long. And you notice there's no paper on it. The paper is a vapor barrier. Whenever applying over insulation, you want to make sure there's no vapor barrier between the two because it will trap moisture between them. And if you trap moisture between them, the lower insulation will get wet and it'll be useless. Keep it coming, Tony. Now, if you notice, I'm running this insulation perpendicular to the joists. Make it a nice, tight seal. All right, I want to cut this piece, and I want to cut it long, so I'll make it 2 inches longer. That's 36. Tony, let's have that piece. Now, to cut this insulation, I actually am using a knife designed for cutting insulation. It's very thin, sharp on one edge. I'm going to simply mark my 36 inches with the knife. Move my tape measure. Now, when I cut, I want to push down with my hand and just drag the knife right across. Now I have a piece of insulation cut to fit, and that should fit nice and tight. We don't want to have any gaps between the batts because that's an air leak. Now I'm going to take the waste, the cutoff piece, and start my next row. Now in the center of the attic floor, there's some subfloor on it. And underneath the subfloor is a rock wool insulation. Now rather than take the boards all up, we're simply going to cover the boards with the batt insulation. Now people like to store things in their attic, but if you insulate the attic like we did, and you put things on top of the insulation will not be effective. You cannot compress it. So to give you an area to store things, we've actually taken these 2x10s and framed a platform, spaced it 24 inches apart. Now we can simply lay insulation in between the 2x10s, and then we will cover the 2x10s and the insulation with 7/16 oriented strand board. And then you'll have a platform to store things. Now, Tony, I don't want you walking on the fiberglass insulation. So, to give you access to your platform, we simply took some 2-inch rigid foam insulation and laid that over the subfloor that you can walk on.
Tom, thanks a lot. This is fantastic. I should see a big difference.
You're going to notice a big difference, and stay warm.
Thanks.
This insulation is such an important story. You know, we tend to think about it in a cold climate to keep the warm, moist air from the house from coming up and into the attic. But in cooling season, it also works for us to keep the warm air from driving down through the building.
Right, because it will make your air conditioning system work harder.
Absolutely.
You know what's interesting to me is that by laying that insulation in the attic floor, what you're trying to do is actually keep the attic the same temperature as the outside air, whether it's the summer or the winter.
That's right.
Exactly. That's why whenever you're insulating, you always want to think about ventilation, whether it's mechanical ventilation or you see a lot of soffit ventilation going underneath the eave. They work in conjunction with a couple of different systems. Could be a ridge vent that runs across the top of the house, or it could be gable vents on each end of the house.
And in that situation, the air sweeps up through these rafter bays and then vents out of the attic.
Exactly.
Now, how is that house ventilated?
Well, actually, there were 2 double-hung windows on each gable end of the house. I simply told the homeowner to keep the windows cracked open with the screen down
Really?
year-round.
Open windows in the middle of winter. Who knew?